I'm Adam. I'm going to hopefully be provoking a debate this evening about social media and where that is leaving everybody in this room in terms of the PR industry. It's going to be full of sweeping generalisations and opinions of my own. And it's very unusual to speak at an event like this where there's wine around us, so no heckling, okay? But honestly, let's make it a debate though, because there are two sides to this story. I started off, just a bit of background on me, I started my career off in consumer PR, and that's what I thought. What a mistake have I made. I worked for a little consumer practice where the first job I was given was to ring 1,783 food and drink journalists and sell into them the fact that this liqueur company had a ginger flavour liqueur. And I just thought, what am I doing? This is awful. Thankfully, things picked up a bit. I then went to work for Bupa, the healthcare company. I worked in-house, and then I got exposed to crisis management, which I thought was really exciting. One of the issues that Bupa had was they paid a gynaecologist called Rodney Ledwood, who described himself as the fastest gynaecologist in the south of England. And as a result, trying to do that job very fast, lots of accidents happened, and he was struck off and sued by 92 women. I think the thing's going. But anyway, the buzz of crisis management, it put a different spin on PR for me when I first got into it all. Then I moved to Luther Pendragon, which was an issues management and crisis management corporate relations firm, and that was fantastic. And I worked for the Committee on Radioactive Waste Management, and they were the organisation that were deciding what we do with our radioactive waste that we've accumulated over the last 50 years from power stations and from nuclear weapons. And I was caught in the middle of this battle where you had the environmental groups had one view of it and the nuclear industry had another, and I was very, very popular representing this organisation doing the PR. Everybody wanted to be my friend, and it was very exciting, and I got to understand the nuances of PR and public affairs and how that all worked. It then got really glamorous because then I went to work at Burson Marsteller, where I started to get involved in sponsorship PR, and I won an award for doing this, which was put a tennis court on an island off the coast of Doha, and got some very lovely looking tennis players, and they played games and we got loads of PR. But that's kind of when I started to get into digital and social, and it was at that point that you could start to see, wow, social media can really amplify this stuff a lot in a different way, and it was really, really exciting, especially when you've got something very visual like that. So I started to move more and more digital, and that's where I ended up where I am today, which is Immediate Future, and where we provide strategic advice for the likes of IBM and Thomson Reuters and the Post Office, where we're helping them solve the issues that you're probably really familiar with, where you've got CEOs and senior people in organisations who think, know they should be doing something on social media, know it's important, know that their customers are talking about it and it's impacting their business, but they're terrified. They're really terrified. They don't want to take risks, and it's probably very frustrating for some of you in this room when you're faced with customers like that. But and it's something I mentioned to a lady earlier, actually, when I look at my customer base, i.e. the people who have budgets within this set of organisations here, there's only one of them that's a PR person. They're customer service directors, they're digital marketing, they're HR people who are looking at this from a recruitment and retention point of view. And salespeople. Salespeople have really woken up to what social media can do for them. So that's kind of a bit of background. So I stand here and talk about this from a point of view of having worked in PR, and I don't know that I actually do PR anymore, which is an interesting thought, but we've already asked this question, so what do you think? Is social media a friend or foe? And I think overwhelmingly it seems to be a friend. Excellent. Right, let's have a look. So from my point of view, I think it's yes, it is a friend, and yes, it's a foe. So if I start on the more positive side of it, content is the fuel of the internet and fuel of social media, and good quality content is key to any successful activity. And I think that plays right into PR people's sweet spot, because you're brilliant storytellers, you know how to craft a message, you know how to deliver it, you know how to create content, and this is absolutely fantastic for you guys. And the thing about social media is that it allows us to kind of empirically decide, if you like, what content we should be putting out there and what works and what doesn't. So I remember early on in PR, it's kind of like, this will be a good story. finger in the air, let's give that a go. It was kind of gut instinct of good PR people that really drove what the story was, what the message was. With all the information we have that consumers put out on social media through social listening, we're able to do something different, which is, okay, over here we have, we know the messages that you want to get out. Over here, though, we know what customers are talking about. And whenever I go into organisations and we start talking about content, it's really, really simple how you do this. You have to find the sweet spot, don't you? You have to find the bit that is relevant, that is engaging to your customers. And you can do that by listening to what they're saying, listening to their interests, listening to where they're saying it, listen to the channels that they're using, and then mould your message according to that. So content is really your sweet spot. And of course, visual content is the thing of the moment, isn't it? So we talk about the visual web. Okay, we know that visual content is shared 3 times more than words. And I don't know about you, but I've just given up on Facebook by just putting posts. I always just put an image on there because I know people engage with it. It's a great campaign that they had at Cadbury's, which the guy spoke at one of our events. And what they discovered were people were talking about how they were using Cadbury's cream eggs when they were cooking. And so they leapt on that idea and said, okay, let's have a competition, let's have a campaign around brownies. And they just got this overwhelming response of people with different recipes and different ways of putting the Cadbury's cream egg into their cooking. And so that was genius. They listened to their consumer and then they came up with an idea that really resonated and worked. Another good example is Oreos, and they were big into the Super Bowl, I think the last Super Bowl, and they went into the Super Bowl prepared to create content in real time. So to do that, they had, I think it was 5 or 6 content creators in the stadium, and they had a whole range of sort of templates that they'd worked up beforehand, different scenarios of different things that might happen in the game. They weren't expecting there to be a blackout, which there was in that particular Super Bowl. And there was a blackout, and of course, they weren't expecting that, but they had some creatives, they had people doing a bit of artwork, and they very quickly got this out. You can still dunk in the dark. Genius, real time. And it just hit the nail on the head. It was there when everyone was thinking, massive retweets, and it just kind of flew. And I think this theme of real time is something that all PR people should be really thinking about, and the way you can make your communications more real time. Good example here of someone that does it really well is Tesco. It's lunchtime, they're asking people what they're eating. People are coming back and talking about it, what choices they might make at the supermarket. Do I want a salad? Do I want a sandwich? And then they're talking about that. Over here, not to say that Boots are bad at social media, it's just one example, that someone's asked them a question and they've got presumably a sort of auto response that says, thanks for following us, but we're only here from these times. See you later. And I think the expectation of customers is that that's going to become less and less acceptable. And then this one just blew my mind. This was Tommy Hilfiger event, a fashion event. And so we've been talking about the idea of real time. Well, this is what I call the idea of bespoke content. So they use their social channels to ask people during the fashion show, what they wanted to see, what content do you want to see? And so people would start coming back, yeah, I actually want to see Tommy Hilfiger with this model. And so they'd send the cameraman round, take the photo, put it up. They said, I want to have a quick video with somebody getting the models changed and all the back scene stuff. Off the video guy went and got it and put it up there within the time frame of the show. And that was just amazing. Obviously, huge resource implications and probably quite expensive, but nonetheless, brilliant and perhaps the future of where content's going to go. Now, that level of engagement is going to create lots of problems, isn't it? And we did this survey on real time, and surprise, surprise, the big issue was how are we going to manage out of hours engagement? Because honestly, do we really want to be working 24 hours doing all this social media stuff? No, we don't. I did a bit of work with a cider brand, and they were very much in the mould of, yeah, we're here 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. And it sounds obvious, but when we did the social listening, people aren't talking to them at that time. They're talking to them on Thursday nights. They're on the way to the pub. They're thinking about this cider. Then they're in the pub, and there's a photo of the cider behind the pub and the sunset, and isn't it lovely? And then Saturday mornings, they're saying, oh, I drank too much of this cider. I wish I hadn't. And as a result of that insight and that listening, we said, well, you've got to change your community management. You've got to have people there joining in that conversation then, not on Monday morning at 9 o'clock, which they did. So there's some challenges. I think the other thing about content is that, what we've learned is this concept of social content, really, which is that there's content and there's social content. Social content is something that's easy to digest, that's shareable, and ideally visual. So we've done lots of work with the likes of IBM, and a really good example of something we did with, not IBM, but another client, where we had a slide share that if you'd watched it end to end, it probably would have taken you about 2 minutes, and we found that lots of people were sort of dropping off. We split that same thing into two and created 2 separate ones, and the viewing time of the smaller one was longer than the whole one put together, which kind of just blew our mind. We're like, well, why is that? And I think people just can't digest much more than that. We're in this attention economy where we're competing for everyone's attention, and we have to make content really easy to consume and digest. So here with IBM, what we did is we turned one of these great big white papers that people love to write, the thought leaders really love to write them, but actually in the end we chopped it into 4 different things, same content, chopped into 4 different ways, and the overall effect was much better. Improved lead generation by 14%. So that's a bit about content. Now, I think the other thing that plays really well into PR people, and that's why social is a friend, is that who are you going to call when there's a crisis? You're going to call you guys, aren't we? I mean, you guys know how to deal with a crisis. And heavens, social media, if it doesn't make crises, it certainly makes them appear worse than they are. And I think we've all seen the panic on, senior managers as they freak out about, people talking negatively about us, and it's seemingly spiraling out of control as we have all these retweets. So, in that sense, it's great news, and we should thank Twitter as well, really, because this is an interesting stat that says that the shift in distribution of crisis epicenters, which is obviously an American thing, and Twitter over the period from 2001 and 2008 has become so at the heart of crises, and so you are, as the people who understand how to respond to crises, how to get that response together, as long as you can then understand the technology and understand the platforms, you are ideally placed to support businesses here. And this was a really interesting thing to kind of back that up, I suppose, which is that when CNN did a study of how news travels, they did those share buttons you get on a news site. So they actually analysed, what people were pressing when they were doing that, and overwhelmingly, social media accounted for 43% of all the shares. So it's just this idea that social media is driving the news that people are consuming. It's kind of the idea that we're in this ever-decreasing circle where we are getting content from that our friends and our family and people that we know are telling us about it, rather than us going out there. It's coming to us. And unsurprisingly, of that 43%, Facebook was very dominant. So, if nothing else, we all know this. I mean, PR people have to be totally on top of social media because it's the way that the news agenda is being shaped. And this is a bit of work we did for a client who appeared on BBC Watchdog. I don't know if anyone had a client on Watchdog? Yes. Yes? It's quite fun, isn't it? Did your client put up someone to go into the studio there? Yes. Oh, well done. So we couldn't persuade our clients to do that. But it's quite interesting seeing. So this is an analysis of where the story played out on social media, before, during, and after. So beforehand, it was very much, on the forum. So people were talking about this thing and the problem with this product, and then you'd actually get the people that were going to be on the show on Watchdog, featured on Watchdog. They were talking about how the fact they were going to be on Watchdog and stirring it all up. And then when it went live, so during this period here, then as you'd expect, Twitter dominated. So everyone was talking about the show. So we're all familiar with this idea of two screening. So people are watching TV or on the computer and emailing and tweeting and all the rest of it at the same time. And then it kind of, after the show, it petered out onto Facebook and forums, and people then started to blog. So after the show, you get people with blogging who had a little bit more time to digest it and kind of form opinions on it. So that's the stuff that I would say means that it's a friend. But my overwhelming view is that it's not good for the PR industry. And here's why. Sorry? You've tricked us. I've tricked you, sorry. I've led you in here now, and you've got to listen to this. Get with the numbers. I think that there's two aspects to this. There's the evolution of big data, and I was talking to somebody earlier about this. The data that comes out of social media is just phenomenal. The numbers and the way that we can analyse and interpret things means that really we need left and right brain people to work in social media. Okay, there's a lot of analysis and analytical stuff that needs to go on. That said, there's still a place for the emotional, and I was really intrigued by this work here, which was done by brain scientists, okay, which showed that it's scientifically proven by these brain scientists that the emotional brain can process information in a fifth of the time that the rational brain, the logical brain, can interpret information. And what they found here was that those purely emotional campaigns perform 31% better than just rational campaigns, which I thought was fascinating. And apparently this is a proven fact. So there's definitely a place for the emotional side of the brain here. But obviously we need to combine both of them in the main. And I talked about social data. I mean, it's just phenomenal the amount of conversations we're having with. I had a really good conversation with the marketing director, and we talked to him about social data and the fact that, if you're clever and you analyse the conversations and you structure them in a certain way, it can give you a lot of insight about what your customer is thinking. And the marketing director turned around to me and said, I'm not sure why I'm employing a market research department, because it kind of poses questions for them. This is, if we do it right, you can get this real-time information in a way that, otherwise you have to go and have solicited, focus groups, polls and things like that. And this is a bit of research that we did, which was looking at social net promoter score. So we're all familiar with the concept of net promoter score. And this was our attempt to apply that same sort of logic to social net promoter score. And when you do that, across, so in this case, we analysed, I think it was in the region of 30,000 mentions of all these different brands. And we did it on a really large scale using an online system, which I can talk to people about afterwards, which is very good. And then you analyse it in this way, and suddenly you turn this data into insights. So our client, I'm not going to name which one it was on there, but can suddenly look at where they are in terms of perception and sentiment compared to their competitor set. Now, if you then repeat that every single month, you've actually got a sort of sentiment tracking survey, which is what we're doing. I found this stat as well, which I thought was brilliant. After 18 minutes of you tweeting, you've reached half the amount of retweets that you're likely to get. So after 18 minutes, the likelihood of your stuff getting retweeted just falls off a cliff, basically. Isn't that interesting? Of course, that information tells you a lot then about how you might run a campaign, doesn't it? And that data can make you more effective and can help optimise what you're doing in a way that I don't think, certainly when I was doing PR and you were talking to journalists, I mean, how do you optimise that? Well, you optimise it by having a very expensive bottle of wine at lunchtime, probably. Is about as optimisation as you can get. And, we're all interested in getting our content shared on social media. This is the holy grail, isn't it? So if we can get your consumers, your target audience, to share your content, then they're doing the job for you, right? You can sit back and watch it go. It's just trying to work out what it is you need to do to get that content in the first place that's shareable. But there is data about this, This is sort of research that's done on the science of sharing and the motivations of people. Apparently, Most people that share in the UK share because they want to help, followed by share because it's relevant to a friend. So, with that sort of insight, you can start to plan campaigns, you can start to brainstorm campaigns with that in mind, rather than finger in the air, oh, this is what my client wants to say and wants to do, and this is what they've done before. We can actually put a little bit of science behind it. And I talked about data, and I mean, the data that we have online is brilliant. And here's some stuff we did where we can look at, where their audience is looking online, what type of behaviour they've got. So there's a tool out there called Global Web Index, which we highly recommend, and it allows you to profile your audience based on their social media behaviour. So when you're thinking about a social media campaign, you can actually kind of look at what's the difference between the way this audience would behave online to this audience, and get better at it. And then this categorization that I talked about earlier, so this is for Le Creuset, and looking at the sort of topics that are mentioned in relation to the brands, and you can start to, and this all has to be done manually, by the way. I mean, we do this manually through different methods, statistically valid methods, but you can then start to say, well, surprise, surprise, the most talked about topic is cooking, but grilling, who would have thought that would be relevant to, or bread, or gourmet, or stew, and you can start to drill down into these subjects and topics and say, well, why is that creating interest? Is there another idea in there? Is there something that our customers are telling us that will be useful? So, you need to be good at numbers. And I mean, you don't need to have a PhD in maths or anything, but you need to have that kind of mentality, I think. And it's really, really, when I'm recruiting, it's very hard to find those people that are kind of communications literate, if you like, but are not afraid of the numbers. The other thing that I would say is, generally speaking, I don't think PRs are that digital, or they're not digital enough. And that's a problem, because we're operating in a digital world here. I mean, social media is one component of all of the web. Now, so let's have a look. What does UX mean?
User experience.
So all the young people are going to get this, aren't they? CPM? Yes. Okay. CPL? It's good that you're not getting them right. You're proving the point. ASU? That's a Facebook ad space unit. And SERP?
Search engine result page.
Yes. Good. Well done. So it's not all lost. But seriously though, those are the sort of terms that we use in our agency the whole time. I mean, when we're doing campaigns, we're talking about landing pages and how we interface with the website and what domains are going to go on and all that sort of stuff. And it's got to be second nature to you. And this is I've deliberately sort of put a filter on it because it's a client thing. But we're building a custom forum for a client. And the complexity around that, and this is a sort of map, this is like one level of mapping of like how this forum's going to go, and the user journey and the user experience, and how we're going to plug different things into it. That's social media. I mean, this is social media, but it's actually quite complicated and technical. And so, you need people that aren't afraid of that and will embrace that. And I found this actually the other day. Bit of a stereotype, isn't it? But the world of PR and SEO is just, I mean, it's kind of a bit dog eat dog actually. And when SEO's dead, perhaps. But well, I mean, I think SEO is always going to be important. But what the things that make it important, or the factors that influence it, are changing. So I think probably you're referring to the idea of backlinks and things like that, and manipulating those backlinks. On this correlation graph here, I mean, Google +1s and Facebook shares now correlate more highly to where you come on results on Google page 1, for example. Sorry?
And they need content.
And they need content, absolutely. But if you get an SEO agency that's employing ex-PR people, and then you blend people who can do content with people who understand the technical side of it, then you've got a really powerful combination. And so social is driving SEO, SEO is driving socials, driving PR. I don't know what what the relationship is, but it's all interlinked. I mean, we ran a campaign for a company called Home Medics, who you probably know as the people that do the massage chairs in airports and stuff like that, but they do other beauty products as well. And it's quite interesting that we ran this campaign, which was very successful. It drove website visits up by 500%. It had an email click-through rate that was way above what they were doing before, massive increase in the fan base and the community. But it involved email, it involves redoing their Shopify site, it involved Facebook organic activity, it involves paid media, it involves remarketing, it involved all these things, digital components, but at the centre of it was driving them to the Facebook and then driving them to engage and driving them to share and be advocates of the product. And I think that's just a really good example of how it's all just become so intertwined, really. So I haven't used the word AVE yet. I just did it. This is a study that Google did, which was looking at the role that different digital channels play in conversion. So this is all about, this is all data from e-commerce sites. And over here, if you're in this sort of grey box, it means that channel is much, much more likely to be the last interaction before someone goes to buy something, or the last click. If you're over here, it's less likely to be the last click, but it still has a part to play in getting you to the last click. And, social, as you'd expect, is sort of over here. It's not really, people that talk to us who expect social media to sell loads of stuff and be a fantastic, converting channel are disappointed. But it's not to say it's not important. The thing is, though, we can't say that about PR, can we? We can't really do a diagram like that and say where PR is. And this is what Google did this, and this is based on 80,000 e-commerce sites in the UK. So we can look at, through analytics and things like that, the part that and the attribution that social has towards a sale, which is brilliant. I also know that social can sell things, and in certain contexts. So the work that we've done for IBM, which is B2B, we've had great success in selling stuff. And we talk about the ROI, and we have got a positive ROI, which means we're re-signing contracts and we're getting more and more work from them. And I'm not going to go into the details of how we do that, obviously, but we won awards for it, we won more work from it, and it works. It works, I think, particularly well in the B2B space, because this order value, the sale value, is very high. So they only need to sell, in this case, as part of IBM, only sell like 1 or 2 things in a year, and they've paid for everything that we've done twice over. And there's also an acceptance that the sales cycle is long. So they're not, it's not like you're promoting baked beans and, you expect a load of tweets to start shifting cans off the shelves. The sales cycle is different. It's a different attitude to it, and it allows us to really use social media to nurture their prospects. So that's all about the numbers. It's all about the analytics and the rest of it. Really pleased with that. So, and I think that really, and what point I'm making here is about the tools. There's tools, and I think that lots of, particularly maybe more seasoned PR people, there's so. I mean, I find it overwhelming sometimes. There's another tool that does this, and there's another way you can do that. Because of the speed of innovation around social media, there is a lot of new stuff happening all the time, and it's more quick fit than ab fab, really. I mean, as in tools and technology. And I found this the other day, the concept of the Chief Marketing Technology Officer, okay, which I thought was brilliant. According to, I think it was Gartner, but CMOs will spend more on IT than Chief Technology Officers will by 2017. Wow. It's because there's so much stuff. I think that's partly to do with the cloud and the fact that people can buy stuff on subscription, and there's not this sort of huge infrastructure they maybe need to invest in. But there's so much stuff around analytics, big data, e-commerce, CRM that the chief marketing officers are buying, and it kind of falls into their remit. I thought I'd share this because these are the tools that we're using at the moment. My favourite is BuzzSumo. Brilliant name. And we are, you can see a range of things there from, Moz, which is looking at the kind of performance of websites and SEO, Bitly and Post, which are obviously URL shorteners and very good at kind of measuring individual bits of content. Radian 6, Simply Measures, Google Analytics, Hootsuite. I mean, there's so many of them, but I thought I'd share that because they're the ones that we're using at the moment and that we find very useful. And the other thing about tools is that, and here I'm talking about advertising. So we're doing more and more paid media, okay? And isn't it brilliant though, really? I mean, although as marketeers and PR people, we'll probably look at the adverts and the sponsored updates that appear on Facebook and elsewhere as just a nuisance. But if you're trying to get, as consumers, as individuals receiving that, but the power of it is phenomenal. I mean, how else would you target unmarried, exercise-loving women of a certain age who love Burberry and live in Cheltenham? How would you do that? You wouldn't be able to do it. But with Facebook and things like it, you can do that. Now, it's still back to the content, as the gentleman said there, and it's still about whether you've got something to offer that's of value. But in terms of getting in front of the right people, it's incredibly powerful, and that paid side of it, I think, is very interesting for us. I think we've, as an agency, it's taken us a while to work out how to do that because it's the domain of media agencies. But we've had to learn it because if you're running a campaign on organic campaign and then you want to put some money behind it, you don't want the media agency getting involved, A, because they might be a threat, and B, because they wouldn't be close enough to the content. So they probably wouldn't do a very good job. And we've had examples where the big media agencies are doing stuff, £2 a click. We've come in and done it in a more intelligent way for £1 a click. So that's my that's kind of my view of where it is at the moment, and that's based on, as I mentioned earlier, I only have one client that has PR in the title. Okay, I just don't see. I see them losing, as this is clients internally. I see them losing the battle for budget. I see those other integrated agencies, the digital agencies, the media agencies, all doing social media, actually all starting to do PR as well probably. And this land grab is going on, and they've got bigger budgets and they're more digital, and they start from a digital point of view. And I think that that's a real problem. So what can we all do about it? Well, I don't have all the answers, but I think the first one is, we need to sharpen our skills, which is what tonight's about, I hope. And you mentioned Google Analytics earlier when we were having drinks. To be honest with you, if you don't know your way around Google Analytics like the back of your hand, then that's the first place I'd start, because most of your clients have websites. Their website has something to do with what you're doing, generally. And if you can work out and demonstrate that your activity is driving traffic even, let alone traffic of a certain quality, of a higher dwell time, who's doing more on your website than other forms of traffic, that's very, very powerful. So analytics, understanding how to use some of those tools I mentioned is really, really key. And then I think places like e-consultancy, I think, we love e-consultancy, we're members of e-consultancy, and all you have to do is follow their blog, follow their social profiles, and they are just living and breathing what's going on now in digital. And I think it's a really, really important source of information, and other places like that. I think you've got to have a plan. Not that one. I think it's, I think when I talk to colleagues in PR, big PR agencies, you know, they're like oil tankers, aren't they? They're doing a certain thing in a certain way, and they need a huge step change. And I know some of them are doing great work there, and they are buying other buying other teams and having offshoot kind of divisions and things like that. But you need a plan about how you're going to get there. I mean, I think the roles are having the right people in the right seats is really key. So when I look at my team, I'm thinking, okay, well, I need people that are content producers, whether that's from a visual point of view, art workers and creatives. I need people that are community managers, social media managers, people that can, know how to interact with the tools, know how to hold a conversation, and are quite intuitive about the way that they talk to the audience, as community managers. You need people that are performing, who are analytical, who can provide real-time information about what's working, what's not working. That post that we put up last week, we all know that EdgeRank is meaning, and Facebook's drive towards encouraging us to spend more money with them means that your posts are getting seen less and less. So let's do less of those posts, but let's do them better. What's the difference between that post's performance and this post? Why was it? Was it the words that we used? Was it the type of image? Was it the time of day? All this optimization really matters. So you need people who can analyze and understand that. And I think, this is the end, I think keeping on top of the trends is really, really important. And I've just pulled up some that I hear a lot about. And in all honesty, I can't say I'm doing a lot about all of those things. But I think they're broadly split into technology and methodology. So we hear a lot about wearable technology. It's not affecting our business at the moment, but marketing automation is, which is particularly in the B2B space, where you can program a system that will mean that if someone downloads this bit of content and they capture the details, it marries them up with your customer database. You then get a single point of view of, are they ringing us up at the moment? Are they buying this? Are they doing that? It will then send an email in 3 weeks based on their actions, blah, blah, blah. And it's literally can be schemed out so that the kind of takes away the idea of lead scoring. This amazing thing that they now do, which is, if you download a white paper, you get 10 points. If you do this, you get 5 points. And by the time you've hit 100 points, then the sales guy is going to pick up the phone to you. Brilliant. The Internet of Things, 3D printing, drones, who knows? And on the methodology side, I've mentioned real-time community management, personalisation, so the idea that your experience is totally personalised wherever you go with a brand online. And customer journey mapping is something that I find very powerful when you're talking to sceptical audiences about social media, when you actually just sort of set out and explain to them in a real life scenario for their business, this is where social media plays into why that person rang up and bought that thing or why they visited the website. We find that very powerful. So, that's the end of my talk, but obviously we're going to have a discussion there. But I just wanted to go around the room again and ask that same question. Do we think social media is a friend or a foe? So who thinks it's a friend? Who thinks it's a foe?
I think it's a friend.
It's a bit, I think it's both, yeah. But I think
Very demanding friend.
it's a very demanding friend, yeah.